Welcome to Conversations with Laurel, everyone. I am your host, Laurel McHargue. My guest today is an author, a speaker, a leadership coach who has performed in touring bands and has filmed and directed and written two short films exploring identity, representation, and the mixed race experience. Ingrid Hu Dahl, welcome to my show.
Hi, Laurel. It's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are so very welcome. I read your book, Sun Shining on Mornings. No, you have one too.
I sure do. I've got a lot of them.
Oh, and first of all, I should say Happy Pride Month. Happy
Oh,
last
thank
week
you.
of Pride Month.
Yes,
And isn't it lovely that Pride Month is in the same month as the summer solstice?
it sure is. I love it. Yeah, we've got all kinds of things coming up this weekend.
Well, good, good. Maybe you should tell me a little bit about them. Um, anyway, you have written a powerful and I would say bravely honest memoir.
Thank you.
And I just want to tell you that you had me on the first sentence, and I will read this to everybody because I read this.
That's awesome.
I I entered this world demanding to see who was in charge. I read that and I'm like, I love this woman already. And I think by the end of your memoir, I think you figured that out. Do you think you figured that out by the end of your memoir? Who was in
Who was
charge?
in charge? Yeah, me. Me. I'm in charge.
All right. So in this book, several times, you have had to deal with the question, what are you? Okay. A question that obviously came from your your beauty and your unusual beauty. And so
Mm.
tell our listeners a little bit about your folks and your background.
Yeah, so I was born in 1980 to a beautiful couple. They were happened to be one of the few interracial marriages in that year. I think the US Census had about 3% of couples listed as interracial. And you have to remember this is 13 years after interracial marriage was legalized in the United States. I grew up in part in Central Jersey, where my parents had met, which is at Rutgers University, and part-time in Taipei, Taiwan, and had the privilege of visiting a lot. So I was kind of struck by my experience in the States was very much what are you? And to your good question, Laurel, it's very much like you look different. I can't put you in a category as white or Asian. So tell me. And the interesting part of me sharing that is it was happening as a very a
Yeah.
young child all the way up into my life by adults, often asking me, demanding to know, like, what are you? You tell me. So it's very interesting. Like, there's a part in the book where I kind of talk about, like, it always felt sort of an interruptive, intrusive, rude. Um, I've talked to podcast hosts who are like, oh, maybe were just curious. I'm like, well, you can tell, you can feel when someone's being curious or just kind of fast and saying, just tell me. Tell me the answer. I don't really want to talk to you or get to know you. I just want to know the answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for asking that opening question because I think a lot of people who don't totally fit in or are multicultural or look different, maybe right now it's a gender expression that's, you can't quite see if somebody's a boy or a girl. People get kind of startled by that. And it's a real moment to just lean into curiosity instead of othering what feels different.
Yeah. Why do we have to put labels on people?
I don't know.
What are you? I'm human. I'm
Yeah, I
human.
would say that.
Just like you. Just like
Yeah,
you.
that's right.
So your mother and your grandmother both reminded me in spirit of my Nana, my mother's mother, who
Awesome.
who would say, balls. If I had them, I'd be king. I mean, that was who she was. She was a feisty little Irish woman who died at age 64. She died way too soon. I
Oh,
was 10 when she died,
mm,
and I still miss her. But your great grandmother unbound her feet. Will you
yes, she
talk to
did.
our audience a little bit about that whole ritual, what it
Yeah.
meant and what she did?
Yeah, I had to do some digging and getting like up and close to my history of culture because it was really rare for privileged women who were kind of as a status symbol. It shows that by binding of the feet, this person is coming from a class that does not need to work.
Ah,
Um, and what it does is at a young age, as your feet get bound and you grow, you can imagine,
oh,
your feet are crippled permanently. So it's a fascinating thing. It's like the symbol to whom, and it's usually to men, that they have the means and that they can essentially cripple women because women can no longer use their feet. They cannot run to freedom, is what I put in the book. And my great grandmother, who's probably hanging out somewhere in the other dimension with your grandmother, who sounds amazing, by the way, she unbound her feet for the sole purpose of learning to ride horses, which is me, and fight the enemy in the revolution. Like it was an important moment for her to lead women to fight for justice and for their communities and for each other. Uh, that to me is similar in the balls, if I had them, I'd be king.
mhm.
It's just this is my destiny. Like, I didn't want my feet bound. I'm unbinding them and I'm going to get on a horse and learn to shoot guns and protect the people. Like, what a badass.
Yes. When did you realize that you came from a line of warrior women? Because I
My,
think it took you a while.
it did. My mom, there was this moment where she shared with me, oh, you got your love of horses from your great grandmother. And that's when I really learned and saw her shooting her fingers up like, like guns. Yeah, that's me and my mom on the cover right there. And I realized I was part of this lineage of powerful warrior spirits, all female. And my mom then looked at me and said, "Yes, we're warrior spirits." What was fascinating to me is that you learn warrior does not mean always fighting and always strong. Like it can be, you could be broken, you can be a martyr. There can be things all at the same time, which my mother was. She was a lot of these complexities. But what's amazing is that you can choose beautiful transformation and healing as part of your warrior lineage to arrive in a different place than was charted for you. And I think that's the true beauty of being a warrior who knows themselves and is willing to take risks and to step into truth for themselves and for others, which did happen with me and my mother, is a beautiful story of that is what we talk about in authentic leadership.
Yeah. And so, we talk about you coming from warrior woman, and yet your mom would say to you, to be a woman, you must cut your own wings. Oh,
That was
oh,
brutal.
that was brutal to read. Why do you think she said that to you?
Oh man, I'd
Oh,
say I wish I could have her still alive and to ask her questions like that because it's funny. You think of all these questions kind of after you lose somebody and you're like, damn, I can never ask them. So I encourage listeners and folks watching, go ask the question. My hunch is that my mom, if she was really having a reflective moment and it was super honest, would probably say like, she didn't have the balls like your Nana, right, to be king. She had, for sure, at one point, these like metaphorical wings where she was meant to soar and to adventure and go places, just as much as I loved horses and wanted that experience, that liberated feeling that I think most women
right.
have. And then you kind of learn through social constructs and limitations and systems of oppression. Like there's a lot with patriarchy and, a lot of this is invisible to people, but man, do women feel it. And
Yeah.
she certainly felt it in corporate America and as a tech pioneer. So I think for her, she really meant like, you are asked to take scissors and reduce your dreams and what feels innately right for your spirit to
Mm.
fit into what your place is told to be from this lens of society, of culture, of these expectations, and they are clipping away. Like I liken that right now when I work with clients. I've been in corporate America now for a while in my career, and I like to say, don't slice your soul away. Don't give it freely. No one's asking you to give it, yet we do. And we anchor our identity completely molded into this like title and this job and these the people
Yeah.
that we work with. No one's really asking us to do that.
Mm.
So there's some choice in that too.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And your relationship with your mom, again, so I talk about you being just bravely honest because it was difficult. So difficult. Always it seemed that her acceptance of you and her love for you was was always conditional, or at least that's how you felt it
Yes,
was.
it did feel that
And
way.
and so describe your evolution, yeah, and your feelings toward her, since you were a child. I mean, you were a
Mm,
child, you felt everything was conditional. I have to make mommy happy. I have to all that. How did you work through that?
it's a great question. The fascinating thing I don't really mention in the book is that my mom would say things often like, Mommy loves you unconditionally. She would say that.
Mm,
But even as a young kid, I knew that wasn't true.
yeah,
So it was hard to kind of trust her saying things when the actions, oh, there was the other thing of like actions meet, are louder than whatever, than words. And
yeah,
you're
yeah,
like, I know. Because sometimes the words, um, though, can be really cutting and hurtful and hypocritical. And then you don't trust the words because you're not sure about the action and vice versa. And, with the way I grew up, there wasn't a lot of boundaries. It was a lot of expectations through disappointment. And it could be manipulative through guilt trips. Like there was a lot at play. So it was complex going through this, not really always having the language to ask my mom, like, well, what's really going on? Like, is this actually about me? And there's a lot of projected frustration or disappointment or hurt. She would say it was us, and I'd be like, don't think it's us. And I think that's pretty harmful. But, she was a young parent with a lot of responsibilities, not just to us, but to the 100 software engineers that she very much cared about their livelihood and them being able to support their families. So we were one of, probably the most important one, but of 100 families that
mm,
she felt it was important for her to take care of and would sacrifice herself. There were a couple times in her career where she, said, Hey, save my team, take me. And I was like, Mom, I don't even know if people are asking you to
oh,
do that. So there's this interesting pattern of being dutiful and for others, but then not really meeting your own needs and wanting things to be an unconditional love. I truly think my mom wanted to feel, and she was unconditionally loved, but she didn't really have the tools from what I saw of her likely childhood and growing up to know what that actually meant and what that felt like.
and again, she always had to prove herself, right? Because again, her marriage to a white American
Yeah,
was not uh, celebrated, right?
no. Her family
So,
was very disappointed for many reasons, but for a while they called him a white barbarian. It was not looked upon favorably, because I think some listeners might assume like, oh yeah, maybe Chinese families are like thrilled. Oh, you met a white American or American, go forward, like approval. No, not with my family. It was very frowned upon. There was also a class difference. My family in Taiwan very much had a very high expectation, what you were saying, for my mom, and to like
mm,
continue
yeah.
in this very like senator leadery way. And that just, I could have seen my mom go that path, but it wasn't hers. That wasn't the path that she wanted.
Yeah, yeah. I think so in the beginning, and again, this is it's basically a chronological story, what your memoir is chronological, and the parts where, you were a young kid and being bullied by white kids, right? Again, wanting
Yeah.
to know what are you, being called half piece of shit. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, it took my breath away. And of course that, the whole half thing, you being bifurcated as you mentioned in here, it brought to mind Cher's song Half Breed, which came
Oh,
out when did that come out? Like
70s?
1973,
80s?
I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
like
yeah.
7 years before you were born. And I was a little kid then, and I remember feeling that it was such a powerful song, and wondering
Mm,
what the heck, why are you doing this? I've always felt like adults are really just older children, right?
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, have we not evolved as a species? Talk about what you think about that, because I
I
don't
think
think
you're
we've evolved
absolutely
as a
right.
species.
Yeah. After working with a lot of adults in a lot of leadership roles, we still carry with us the similar kinds of messaging and lenses as how we were, nurtured and grown up or not nurtured at all. Like there's so much complexity in what we still carry. And I think it takes a lot of conscious care and effort to be curious enough to unlearn those things and to even consider that, ooh, some of these things I learned weren't great, weren't correct, were harmful to others or harmful to me. I think about women like my grandmother, my white grandmother saying things like your place is in the kitchen. But you can tell like there was this moment where I'm like, it's not even, it doesn't even sound like her voice when she's
Mm,
saying that. It's as if she's repeating what messages she was told. And we had enough space generationally where I could meet her in like a lot of love and empathy and saying to her like, Graham, it's our time now, like this is our time to go get educated and to pursue careers. And I'm seeing her how she was not able to have that option or that choice, like just made me love her even more, not ingest the same message, but to understand how that had kept her very much in a little bit of a prison. And it made her very depressed. Like I think there's a probably studies on this, but women who have these cages or clipping the wings, like my mom, go through bouts of depression, and it's kind of clear as to why. Imagine being in this sort of like social cage. That's super tough. I think I'm deviating from what you were saying, but I got caught up in like those expectations can be so harmful.
Yeah, yes. So I'm the fourth of five girls in my family, and I left Smith College after a year and a half to go to West Point. My mother was horrified, absolutely did not want her little girl going into the army. And and yet once I was there and once she saw what I was doing and accomplishing, and I always felt a little bit like she was uh, is jealous, maybe envious of
Ah,
that. She raised
mm,
five girls. She's, she worked at the high school as a secretary, but was
mm,
always home to cook meal, to, get all the
hmm.
laundry done and the ironing done, and have all of us girls clean and out of the way by the time Daddy got home, so they could
Wow,
have their
wow.
their scotch and wine in the living room while, before he was fed. I mean, it's just she had, I think, so much potential. She was an amazing artist, and yeah, I just, yeah, I felt like she was both horrified and proud of me, if that makes sense. I don't
Hmm.
know. Yeah. So anyway, it's a thing. It's a societal thing, right, with women still, and this whole idea of evolution, I think, still comes up where we haven't evolved much, I think, as a species. Um, More than once in your book, you say that you had to choose your actions carefully in response to different situations.
Hmm.
Explain that a bit, and do you still feel you have to do that? Choose your actions carefully. Explain what you meant by that.
Probably less carefully than that like teenage 20 or early 20 something where you feel like you're still learning the dynamics of existing in the public domain, which is very much a still kind of a male led, male constructed domain. And there's a scene which I don't put in the book, but there's this like teenage boy who doesn't want me to be in the way of his friendship my friendship with my best friend at the time, but he is trying to, have sex with my friend and we're young. It's like late middle school years, and I really hate this guy. I think he's horrible. He's a football player, a very like archetype kind of thing, which is a
Mm-hmm.
bummer. And he gets off at one of the bus stops with me and tells me he's going to like have his friends gang rape me. And, keep in mind, I'm like 14 or
Middle school.
so,
Yeah.
and the choice I make at the time is to one up him and say, well, then I'm going to get everybody in this community to beat the shit out of you. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's kind of one of those things where it felt like I had to protect myself. I had to do what I need to do to make these choices because adults weren't always in this sphere, and nor did adults feel like they knew how to help or to protect.
Protect.
Like they were doing it in all the wrong ways, it seemed. They weren't, asking questions, connecting, like whatever. It was all very like reactive and like passive aggressive. Because I don't think we're taught how to, going back to what you said about adults, still kind of being, stuck
Sure.
as
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
right? You don't have language. But my language was very like fierce and crass because I felt like the environment I was in required me to use and wield those as ways to say, like, watch it. Like you
I mean,
watch
yeah.
yourself.
I mean, that's amazing because like many other girls would have run home screaming, crying, and frightened, right? You
Mm.
didn't,
Oh, it was
you
scary.
you didn't even tell your mom, I don't think.
No, no, I didn't tell her. Or my dad. That'd been interesting if I told my dad. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know like, how he would
Yeah,
respond to that,
yeah,
but
yeah. And your whole relationship with him and how that changed and how he
yes.
didn't want to lose his little girl. And oh my gosh, that was just again so powerful and it hurt. It hurt to read
Yeah.
it because I could feel the hurt in you.
Yeah, and him. He felt
Yeah,
like I had
yeah,
abandoned
yeah.
him and then got angry and wanted to hurt me. And we talk about it. What I love about my relationship with my father and I, we can still have tough conversations that were like, oh, that was really painful. Like, what was going on in your mind then? And it's like, ah. And then figuring out that, he had gone to church to try to get like male
Mm,
support. But,
support. Yeah,
similarly, I don't think people had the tools. So they're saying the same kind of things that society says, just slightly different. And it's, I don't know why therapy wasn't, it was like maybe Christian therapy, but I was just looking for therapy, and certainly thought my parents could really benefit from it. I also think, my parents' fear of my boldness always equated to them thinking I would like get pregnant or something instead of being curious to nurture this like badass energy. Like, had they introduced me to like more female role models, which I saw in certain contexts of growing up, but not from them. My
mm,
mom was a role model, but I didn't get pulled into her world enough. My
yeah,
aunts who didn't have kids were role models, but I guess it goes back to not having language to ask.
yeah, yeah. You again in the early years when you were so into being with the horses and the Blackie, the horse Blackie.
Oh, I
Oh
love
my
that
gosh.
horse.
Him living two completely different lives,
Yep.
being being caged and being free. And
Yeah.
you could only trust him when he
Wow.
was free. And I mean, you know, it's like you were him in a way. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I that was beautifully done, by the way. You
Thank
had
you.
so many opportunities, you know, to go on with the writing and the showing.
Mm,
You had modeling opportunities. No big
mm.
surprise there.
Thanks, Laurel.
These are roles that you left
Mm-hmm.
because you realized somehow at a young age even that you didn't want to have to play those roles in order to be in those worlds. Do you have any regrets, first of all, for either of those?
No, I don't. I sometimes I'm curious what it would have been like to do the 1 year in Taipei, Taiwan by myself,
Yeah.
like that. Like who knows what kind of adventures that could have opened up. But no, I don't really have regrets about it because other things happened in their place,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think were important. Like with the modeling, not taking modeling, I ended up being in like these bands and, you
Hmm.
know, that was really important for me. And I think I needed community and to figure out who I was. And, my sexuality was just like taking so long to kind of percolate and figure itself out. And I don't know if that would have taken it even more time if I
Right.
was in Taiwan for 1 year or more. But
Right.
yeah, that's a great question. I don't have regrets. I do miss horses. Like I think not about me as an equestrian, but more of what would it have been like had I not been a successful equestrian and just had this relationship with horses? Because
Mm.
even now, when I try to ride, it's like the muscle memory of these things don't really allow it to be enjoyable.
Oh, oh,
It's hard.
interesting.
I think I have to
Yeah.
get to a place where I've completely lost that to just be and to allow that liberated feeling that I initially loved about horses to return. But it's probably going to take my most of my lifetime to get back to that.
Well, that's a good goal. It's a good goal.
It is.
So, so what was interesting in here is how you described how you wrestled with homophobia, right? I mean,
Mm,
now for our listeners out there, you're married to a woman. You wrestled with your homophobia and your mother, not wanting you to even broach that as a possibility
no.
because she said that she would disown you.
Yes.
What made her finally change?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good. I honestly think she had to wrestle with a lot of her own. I don't want to say demons because it's not really quite the right word or image I'm trying to evoke. My mom went through so much of her own like mm, career, like she went to rock bottom in a couple different areas of her life all at the same time. She probably was going through menopause or just had menopause. She lost, kind of identity around career. She had a horrible boss. She had cancer. She had this gay kid. She was reliving this life now in Taiwan and it was different. Um, I think there's a lot of disappointments in trying to find kinship and friendship and just being like, oh my God, am I never finding it? And it kind of imploding.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what happened, but something released, let go, and it got more clear to her after she didn't come to our wedding. We didn't talk for a few years, where she somehow made that choice. And I'd love to ask her like what awakened that choice, but she chose to have me in her life and not what she was holding so steadfast and like enveloping herself in this disappointment and shame and kind of similar to your mom, to your great point. I don't know if it was envy either. That's a strong word in my sense, but it's almost like something never allowed her to experience perhaps what I was. And that was creating a lot for her. And something when she let that go, and some of this it's hypothetical, she made peace with that. And she showed up in this way where she was very supportive of us, of our love, of queerness in general. Like that was just such an incredible way of, she still maintained her faith. It's not like she had to let some of those things go, but she just handled it so beautifully. And I was so proud of her, like for doing that work, whatever she was doing, because she was pretty dark for a while, spiritually blaming and my
Yeah.
queerness on a lot of her disappointment and even her
Your cancer.
cancer.
Yeah. 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 That was hard. That was, ooh, that was tough.
That was a climax. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, oh my gosh, your descriptions of what you went through during the beginning years of COVID, trying
Oh,
to go
God.
visit her in Taiwan and what you had to go through and the being held up in a hotel and having the police calling you every day. And all. I mean, I think of those that first year anyway, coming home from the grocery
Mm.
store, stripping naked in the
Yeah.
garage
Oh my
before
God.
going in, and even in the grocery store, wearing the mask, not making eye contact with anyone
Mm-hmm.
for fear that we might have to say something or talk, or you didn't
Mm.
want I didn't even want to breathe. The fear around that was just so intense. And, does it make you wonder now, what we can trust from our doctors?
Mm.
And
Oh, I
because
mean, it
because
felt,
now COVID is just like, oh, it's around. We just have to deal with it.
oh my God. I think Taiwan overreacted, but it was a really just wild time. Like I remember, being in that quarantine taxi one of the times where I was trying to get a PCR test, and there's like PCR and antigen, and then there's a whole section where you don't even know where you're going because my Chinese wasn't good enough, that were like people who had already tested positive, and I kept like mistakenly going.
Oh,
But then there were so many spikes in the country, every now and then there'd be like, I mean, blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks of people lining up to get tested, and just realizing at every turn of every block of seeing how long this line is that I wasn't going to see my mom that day or the next day. Because if I couldn't get that test and get the results in a couple hours, the opportunity, the doors would shut. That was just so dramatic. And, I think in some ways, I don't know if my mom really knew what we had to go through. Like, I think she sort of got a sense. Clearly, she's not around to read the details of it. And we absolutely didn't want to like share that much with
yeah,
her because
burden
that was
her.
the
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's something subconscious bringing this full circle that reminded her that no matter what, she was loved, and man, was she loved. She was worth all of that. And I think that really made her feel, yeah, just deeply and unconditionally loved. It was good to see that happen for her.
And what an amazing woman to get her. She got her
Yeah,
master's degree,
her
like,
third,
you know, her
while
third
she
master's
was
degree while she was
sick.
dying,
Yeah.
while she was dying,
Yes,
and not
actively.
telling anyone. Uh, your story, Sun Shining on Morning Snow, it's a lot about you and your mother. And a line in here just made me catch my breath, of course, because
Mm,
the line was, "In breath do we part," right? Like,
yeah.
like the marriage vow, and death do we part.
Uh,
She died the day before she turned 67. I mean, I'm
yeah.
66, and I'm thinking,
So
oh,
young.
just so young. And she hid her weakness. She hid the fact that she couldn't open something or do something that you wanted her to
Oh,
do. And
yes,
it
yes.
wasn't until you realized that it was the cancer she had that weakness, and she felt shame with that. I mean,
Yeah, it
she
was
hid
hard.
that. She didn't tell anyone. And and at the time you're standing up for yourself, you're, saying your piece, and you're, again, you are who you are. And of course, that made you feel bad. And what did you learn from your mother's choices, and how,
Mm.
again, the fact that she hid so much pain? Yeah. What did you learn from her, how she chose to live?
My mom
That's a
is
huge
so
question, I know.
no, it's a great question. It's interesting going back through those beautiful scenes that you're regaling listeners, and she was so fascinating in that she was hiding it, but also like playfully naive. Like she just didn't want to know. She didn't want to know. I was
Uh,
like, oh. She's like, oh, you just read my CT scan, and she'd look at my face. She goes, I don't want to know. I'm like,
yeah.
how could you not want to know, Mom? Like things aren't great. She's like, whatever, we'll just keep treatment. She just was
Yeah.
very naive and had a lot of faith she'd get better, and clearly, she didn't. But man, we made those moments and that summer count, and I'm grateful, so grateful for that wild, wild, strange internship that she did. It was weeks before it started that she just sort of announced that she was going to live with us for a summer, and it was very intense. Anyway, I hope people read that because it's a really funny levity,
Yes.
that comes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But
And I
yeah,
think
she
so
was,
many
yeah,
people will relate to that. So many people
yeah,
will relate to that, right?
good.
And the responsibility of a daughter to a mother,
Hmm.
and particularly in your mom's culture, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, again, tough to read. And your wife being just so supportive and so
Oh,
wonderful and so
what would I do
patient.
without her? Yeah. She was so different too. Like, oh my God, having both of them in the house too. I was like, will you tell your mom? Will you tell Courtney? I'd be like, oh my God, just talk to each other. I think it also gives a lot of, you know, empathy for what I was going through, having two women in my life being in the same household, two very
Yeah.
important, the most important women in my life, and
Yeah.
how my wife had really good boundaries. My mom had none. Like my wife really eats like a bird. My mom was eating like a teenage boy. It was just such a juxtaposition. And then when I would, kind of lose my cool and get frustrated, they both could commiserate. Well, there she goes, losing the handle, right? I know she does that. And I'd be like, what? Like it was just really kind of entertaining. And we even have stories like where we took my mom to the 4th of July up in Calistoga, and it was, supposed to be this really beautiful time with our daughters and, her. And, we got a flat tire and it was the 4th of July. It was almost impossible. My wife had these sports tires. I was just like, why did you get sports tires? It's impossible to get. So, we go this long journey home with a donut finally. And it's like everyone's tired and, but everyone tried. And I think what's so beautiful is having that summer of all women in these different generations reminds you of like, just being present with one another can be such a gift. It can be enough. Just being present and laughing and connecting and cooking. And yeah, it was a really hard moment that you're talking about with the pans. I didn't realize she couldn't pick them up.
Yeah.
And she didn't want me to know, but she also didn't realize how much of a burden it was
Yeah.
always cleaning all the dishes. And I bawled. That was
Yeah.
such a hard
Oh,
reality. And it was the
yeah.
last time, that summer was the last time she was healthy. It was just a decline
Yeah.
after that.
Yeah. So a while, many, many years ago, I don't remember how long ago, I read a book. I've read lots of books, but it was, I think the title was something like Brain Sex or something like that. And
Ooh.
it talked about how we are all on a spectrum
Mm-hmm.
from complete XX to complete XY, and everyone else is somewhere on the spectrum in the
Oh,
middle,
cool. I like that.
which I thought was wonderful. So you say you're queer, you're married to a woman. What does queer mean to you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's for me that unique. I just think women are very attractive. They smell good. I just very attracted to, of course, mostly just my wife, but there are a few women that were like, man, that woman is just so attractive, right? And we're like, yeah. So we can agree on those things. But it's funny, like there have been times where people will say things to me that's so surprising, as if queer people or people who are a lesbian, like straight up lesbian, I'm a lesbian, will be like, oh, are you attracted to me? Because I'm a woman, like, wait, what? Like, it's kind of like if a straight person asked a man, like, oh, because you're a man and you're straight, you must be attracted to me. Like, that's kind of silly, right? Because
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah,
attracted to who they're attracted to, but just because you're straight doesn't mean automatically you're attracted to that man, right? Or
right,
right?
right,
And
right,
so I
right.
remember being
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I don't want to, make you upset or something. Like, I don't really understand the origin or intention of this question, but no, I'm not. Is that surprising to you? Are you like, I'm like, well, we just figured as a lesbian, you're just attracted to all women. I'm like, that's not how this works, like at all. I even think sometimes a certain man will be like really beautiful, and I'm like, oh wow, that person's attractive, but it doesn't mean I want to like be physical
Jump
with
his
them
bones.
in
Yeah,
any
yeah,
way. Yeah, no, 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 no,
yeah.
no.
And you've had boyfriends. You've done that. Yeah,
I sure have and had a
yeah,
great time, but once I realized women, it just made a lot more sense. It clicked in all the ways, like physically, emotionally, mentally. Not everybody was a great partner, and their women come with their own stuff, just like men
Yeah,
do. So
yeah.
that's worth navigating. But absolutely, I feel really proud to be like, oh no, I'm queer. I think, sometimes I have a neighbor conversation, and he's like, so you like what I like? I'm like, yes, I do. I like what you like. But my body looks very different than yours. And so she likes what I have. And your wife likes, I think, what you have, I hope. But it's kind of cute. You're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, I spoke with a queer friend of mine and I asked her and
Yeah,
she said
love that.
she thinks that um anyone who's not 100% heterosexual is queer because again, we're all on that spectrum. I mean, I think so I've been
Yeah.
married to my husband for 42 years.
Oh my God, congrats.
Yeah,
Wow.
thank you. To this day, I mean, I love him more every year. We
Hmm.
have, I think, in relationships that is just so unusual in
Oh,
this day and age. And
wonderful.
I think back to my 3 semesters at Smith College
Mm,
and this wicked crush I had on a sophomore
yeah,
girl when I was a freshman.
that's awesome.
And I didn't, it didn't do anything with it, but I think if she had done anything, I might have
Mm,
experienced
mm,
something, so it's
sure.
like, people are beautiful.
Yeah, and you
Yeah,
often you connect to like a vibe or
yeah, yeah.
a spirit or a personality or a you can't even say what it is. You're just like, whoa.
Whoa, yeah, there's something
Yeah,
there that's just so attractive. Yeah,
totally.
yeah, I
Almost
mean,
inexplicable. I
right.
love what you said because I don't even know. I'm sure you'd agree with me. I don't even know if there's 100% straight or even 100% gay. Like I know a lot
Yeah,
of people who, as they get older, who've been queer or lesbian or gay, kind of like get back on this sort of expansive spectrum and it's really
yeah,
beautiful and you're like okay now you're with a man and you really love this man and it's about the person and the connection and I think
yes,
that's really beautiful, probably not likely for me but also I'm not going to close any doors. I think that's the thing is not closing a door or being in a closet or whatever it is from what your heart is telling you, what your attraction is telling you, like letting that just kind of be as present and courageous and truthful as possible. Like that's, I think, how we're supposed to kind of navigate the world.
yeah. And again, you didn't know when you were little,
No, I didn't.
right?
My wife
And
did, but I did not.
yeah. So again, it's the spectrum. Um, which has been more difficult for you to navigate, being
Mm.
queer or being biracial?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question.
And maybe you
Maybe
can't, I don't know.
I think the vignettes that I follow in the book are pretty accurate, like timing. So younger to mid 20s, definitely the sort of spotlight on me being othered and
Yeah,
different
yeah.
and exotic.
Hmm.
And then this other bigger chunk where I was like really wrestling with homophobia at 20s and maybe right at 30. Uh, that was really difficult, both in being queer and then diving right into like this kind of queer community and identity and being a rock musician and then being like, wait a minute, I don't want to just be seen as like a hot lesbian. I don't want to be a character on the stage that you just want to have sex with. Like I want a meaningful, deep relationship that's not based just on that.
Yeah,
Um, so this vignette, I've been with my wife 16 years and married 11 this September, and it feels like this wonderful vignette where we're on this like calm lake and more we arrive at this calm lake of just like it's peaceful, it's beautiful temperature. I can sense that she's there. Sometimes we'll hold hands, but she's doing her own thing, I'm doing my own thing, but there's this like real love and respect and consideration. I definitely feel like my love with Courtney is unconditional. Like truly it feels that way. It is not conditional. Yay, yes, the book.
sun shining on morning snow. Tell us what the title means because it's beautiful.
Thanks. It's my Chinese given name, which is pronounced Tao Ching. And I was born in February, so it was snowing out. And also the morning after my mother's memorial, there was a very special, unpredictable dusting of snow in the morning, and it was like a full circle
Yeah.
moment.
Gave me goosebumps.
Same.
Ingrid Hu Dahl, what would you like readers to take away from your book?
You have one life to live, so why not choose your truth and living boldly?
Yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to say to people? Any advice you'd like to give to people living bifurcated lives, those who still feel like they're, as you mentioned in here, other?
Yeah, I would say, you can get a little too used to having a silent experience. And if you learn anything from my story is to share, to connect, to communicate. So it's not just on you, because you'd be surprised to find out how much might actually be inherited, like I found out from my mom, or some of these things are greatly shared. So for those of you who might not have these kind of multicultural experiences, which is totally fine. I think lean into that curiosity, like truly be curious. When you see somebody who's interesting to you or different and you want to engage, lean in more into that curiosity as opposed to just wanting to know.
And how do you do that without asking, what are you?
I think it's just going up to somebody and saying, you are strikingly different, and I'd love to just come by and have a conversation with you. Would that be all right? Because, I'm deeply curious about your life and would like to get to know you. I know that's a lot of words, but sometimes people who've literally said, like, I can't understand what your ethnic background is, but I'm so curious what it is. That's more of a question and a
Yeah.
curiosity than what are you?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Which
Where are
is
your
just
people
so
from?
rude.
Yeah. So
Well,
if you
I would,
really are
yeah.
curious about someone's ethnic background,
Yeah.
just ask.
Yeah.
I'm curious, would you mind if I asked what your ethnic background was?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great. Um, I would say I'm mostly straight white woman and
Mostly.
and
I like that. I love it.
and I got so much out of this book. So like people out there who read that, you're
Mm,
biracial and queer, they might say, ugh, I don't want to read something like that. But I got so much out of this. I mean, and I think there are a
mm,
lot of people who can relate to the different situations that you experience here. I mean, there are a lot of kids who are bullied for different reasons. Maybe they're fat, maybe they have freckles, maybe they whatever. Um, I as a woman graduating from West Point. I graduated 3 years after you were born. There's some things that, I was other. A lot of things
mm.
that I experienced that I related to in here. So, your book, I think, touches on so many topics that, are relatable to not just queer people and not
Yeah,
just biracial people. And so, thank you for that.
you're welcome. I wanted
Yeah.
everybody to see themselves in the story and
Yeah.
to
Yes.
connect in different ways.
Yes, to even imagine, even to imagine what you're going through, because again, you're very descriptive and it's beautifully written.
Thank you, Laurel.
Ingrid Hu Dahl, thank you for visiting with me today and sharing your story. Yes, and I'm going to give you a piece of advice that my father always gave me when I was in the army,
Ooh,
and
okay.
his father gave him.
Okay, thank
This is
you.
this advice is going to surprise me, and the advice is, don't let the bastards get you down.
Frick yeah. Yeah. You and my mom. Here we go. It's a
Right?
good phrase. It's a good phrase. Thank you
It,
for that.
it really is. Again, thank you for your time, and maybe we'll meet each other in person sometime. You live in
I would love that.
Sausalito,
Yeah.
California. I'm in Salida, Colorado, and it's beautiful
Let's do
here.
this.
Yeah. All
I'd love
righty.
to meet you.
Thank you again so much, and have a wonderful weekend. Last weekend of Pride Month, and yeah, just keep being awesome.
Thanks, Laurel. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Bye.